All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk to you about 5 huge lessons I learned my first year riding dual sport motorcycles. Let's go. All right, so today I want to talk to you guys about how I overcame some obstacles and learned a lot of lessons with my first year riding dual sport motorcycles. And although I got 5 things for you guys to take from this video, hoping that you will learn from my mistakes and not have to make the same mistakes I did, this is going to be more of like a story-based episode. So all of these events happened in a chain. I guess you could call them a chain of events, starting with the first one, and each event helped me progress and get better as a rider. So the first thing being, do not ride alone at first. So one thing that I learned right away was that riding alone can get you into some serious trouble. Shortly after I picked up my 300L Rally, I decided to go out for a short little gravel ride. It was a nice warm day and all I ended up taking with me was 1 beer. I was just gonna go out for a quick little ride down a gravel road, try to find some scenery, maybe down by the creek, enjoy 1 brewski, and then ride home. And I mean, I know drinking a beer and then riding your motorcycle is ill-advised. 1 beer, I mean, I can drink a beer, I'm fine. But the ride didn't really end up going that way at all. So what I actually went ahead and did is I found a double track trail that looked cool and looked appealing, so I took a left-hand turn. I soon would find out I was in over my head. I had no idea what I was doing. I was afraid of the terrain. I didn't know how the bike would react to things like large ruts, steep hills with loose rocks, and what eventually ended up happening is I got kicked off my bike, trapped underneath, and I ended up in the hospital with 30 stitches in my calf. So after the trip to the hospital to get my calf muscle stitched back together, and frankly scaring the hell out of myself, I was quickly a different rider. I would say I went from a rider who knew nothing to a rider who knew nothing and was scared. And I mean, it almost got to the point where I considered selling the bike before I even fell in love with it. I did get back on the figurative horse, but every time I would get out and ride, I would stick to gravel. I would go with friends, and you know, the narrative was, I don't want to ride anything that's scary. And what was scary to me wasn't scary to them at all. So I think the huge lesson to learn here is do not go out and ride over your skill and over your abilities. It's just not a good idea. Riding a motorcycle seems safe enough. I mean, I know people talk about it being a dangerous thing to do, but riding a relatively heavy dual sport bike like the 300L Rally on trails when you've never ridden a motorcycle really ever in your life isn't what I would consider a very good idea. It took any confidence and any real desire for me to want to ride the bike away before I even got into riding. So that leads me to my second point, and that second point is fear in dual sport motorcycle riding is not your friend. And I know people can say at times, you know, fear is there to keep you safe. And I would agree with that. I mean, I come from a realm where that is definitely true with an area like climbing, but this is very different. For me, when I started to ride and let fear lead me, it ended with me making even more poor decisions on the motorcycle. It made me tense, it made me scared, it made me fixate on obstacles, which if you come from any other realm of riding, I mean, whether it's a car or a mountain bike, which is you know, a background that I have myself, I should have known better. Target fixation is a real thing, and I definitely did it on the bike. So basically what ended up happening is I was so scared all the time that I was never able to relax. I was constantly tense, and this made for just not a good time. I would clam up, make poor decisions, and just crash a bunch. Not only did that hurt my confidence, but it destroyed my bike. My bike got to the point where I was constantly fixing it. I would come home, everybody had had a good time riding, because at this point I was riding with friends because I was, well, afraid to ride by myself. And I would have so many repairs to do that I was like, what the hell am I doing? I should just sell this thing. I'm just wrecking a brand new bike. I felt like a complete tool. It's just one of those things that I really had to learn the hard way. Fear is something that I've faced for years, doing a lot of different types of adventures. But this was definitely just a different type of fear, one that I couldn't rationalize. The riding would come at me so fast, and because of my accident, I was constantly afraid that I was going to do the exact same thing that I did and injure myself again. All right, so we'll stop right there, and I have to say, if you guys are liking what you see on the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's a huge help for me and the channel to make content for you. let's get into that number 3 lesson learned. And that lesson is dropping your bike is okay to a point. Now, once I started watching YouTube and trying to get better and realizing, you know what, I like this, I'm enjoying the time with my friends, I want to stick with it, and I tried to educate myself. One thing that I learned was dropping your bike is kind of normal. So I took that too far. And it came to the point where anytime that I would tense up, I would just let go of the bike. Bike would get dropped, I'd put it down, and that's what led to all the damage to my bike, and again, to my confidence. So if I could reiterate that point, but in a different way, I would say personally, it's okay to drop the bike, but not all the time. Don't make it your go-to, Try to develop the skills to ride through some of the terrain that would cause you to drop the bike. Try to get better, try to hang on. There's definitely a time to let that bike go, but it doesn't have to be all the time. There are many guys out there like Dork on the Road who I've watched and learned a lot from that emphasize this point. And again, I would agree with it, but for me personally, and maybe for you, don't feel the need to just ghost ride the bike anytime you're afraid. Learning those skills to hang on to the bike, to work through some of those technical areas of riding will in the end make you a better rider. So try to pick your spots. Don't lead through fear like I did. Hang on to the bike when you can. I would say drop the bike if you feel like you're gonna get injured. And in saying that, that leads me to my 4th point, which is ride with riders that are more experienced and more skilled than you. This was that turning point in my skill and in my confidence. When I would go out and ride by myself, not only did I not know the limitations of me, myself, the rider, but I had no idea what a bike like this was even capable of doing. And when I started riding with other folks, I realized, that hill is actually something that a person could climb. That's not something that some crazed lunatic's going to try to attempt. It's actually something that a mere mortal can do. So I learned so much. I learned how to ride in sand. I learned how to ride in loose rocks, in ruts, in wet terrain, steep inclines, and big downhills. I was able to learn that if these guys could do it, so could I. And that doesn't mean throw caution to the wind completely. You're still gonna have to advocate for yourself and say things like, hey, you know what? I'm way too scared. I feel like this is way out of my league. And I have done that, and I still do that on some occasions. But then there's opportunities to learn, riding with a few guys like Matt and like Chris, they've been able to coach me through it even at some time. They'll say like, hey, that line seems to be a good line, let's try that. You wanna try that line at speed, give it another go. Do that in 2nd gear instead of 3rd gear. Having the opportunity to ride with people and watch how they do things will dispel some of that fear and will advance your riding. I highly recommend it. If you have no one to ride with, I do completely understand that, getting out in solitude and going for solo adventures is incredible. And I would say I don't discourage people from doing that, but again, stay within your skill level. Go riding down a gravel road. Let people know where you're going. Don't go do things that are over your head. And if you do, take somebody with you that knows what they're doing so that you can learn from them. I can honestly say that's the number 1 reason my riding got better. And that's the number 1 reason that my riding went from absolute crap to, average, or maybe even a little above average. I learned through watching and I learned through doing. And once I learned that the bike could do the things that I needed it to do, I was a much better rider. So in keeping with the lesson of riding with skilled folks, I can say that the next thing that I learned is that speed is actually your friend on a dual sport motorcycle. Now, again, that's not to say you're gonna go out and attack every trail at 60, 70 kilometers an hour. But what it does mean is that you're gonna gain stability with a certain amount of speed on a variety of terrain. Where I live, most of the trails that I ride here at home are predominantly sand. And that was another area that absolutely scared the hell out of me. To ride sand felt so insecure. It felt like skiing without being on an edge. I felt like I was at the mercy of the sand constantly and that I was just continually gonna crash, which at the beginning I did. I crashed a lot. But I learned right away, once you pick your line and you grab a gear and you get some speed, you kind of just start to float on top of that sand. The best thing you can do is commit and grab the throttle. Going too slow, just like on a pedal bike, creates that instability, creates that wobble. You gotta have a little bit of momentum when you're riding these bikes. I learned that, obviously, the hard way. Once I discovered speed, it was one of those things where even my riding buddies noticed. I was going from crashing, honestly, 5 or 6 times every time we go riding to maybe once. I mean, and it is getting better. Still not the best. I still lay the bike down, but I'm having fun doing it, and I know when to do it. All right, so last lesson that I learned, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with skill, is that buying your first dual sport motorcycle is definitely what I would call a gateway drug. And if you want to speak to a specific bike, my bike, the 300L Rally, really has done that for me. I chose the bike because I felt like it was kind of the best of both worlds. I mean, I know it has its hang-ups and I know it has its limitations, but this bike does a little bit of everything. And what that did for me is it made me start to dream and scheme about other motorcycles. When I rode on the highway and when I ride on the highway, it makes me think about riding, a big adventure bike or some sort of a cruiser with cruise control where I can get up to speed, maybe get 2 up so I can bring my wife and kids along. But on the other hand, it makes me want to dive even deeper into like hardcore adventure trail riding. It makes me want to get a 2-stroke. It makes me want to get a pit bike. It makes me want to get a TW200. There is not enough room in my garage at this point for all the motorcycles I obsess about constantly. I mean, Africa Twin, KTM 890, BMW. Oh my God, I want them all. And it's all because I picked up my first dual sport bike. Maybe if my first bike was a street bike or a more traditional motorcycle, I wouldn't be able to conceptualize what, riding dirt and trails was all about. But because I have this specific bike, this dual sport, this trail bike, this street legal bike, it just has me jonesing for every type of motorcycle riding. And I think that's pretty cool. The next thing I mean when I talk about gateway drug is there's just so many things you can do to these bikes to make them just a little bit better, a little bit cooler. Honestly, the sky's the limit with this stuff. From exhaust systems to crash bars to new seats to decal packages to racks to, did I say exhaust systems? To panniers and camping gear to GPS units, adding rally towers if you don't have one. There's just so many cool little ways to make a bike your own and to modify it. Then for me as a creator, getting into the whole world of content creation and making videos and being able to have fun with it that way. And then like meeting community and getting to know my good friends on another level, friends who rode motorcycles forever, brought me into this fold, into this culture. It's just such a cool thing. It's so addicting and I just love it so much and I'm so grateful for it already. And I mean, that's what I think is really cool about this channel. The fact that I can talk to you folks, people who are already following my adventures, and the fact that we get to chat about motorcycles, and build this community is special to me already. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate everybody who's followed me so far. Really close to those magic monetization numbers, and I'm really happy to be making content and telling stories, and I'm really excited to keep it going. I mentioned the 300L Rally a few times. I'm gonna put my 300L Rally playlist right over here for you guys. And then I'm gonna put my moto camping playlist over here because I think there's some really cool videos there to be watched. I wanna thank you guys again for all your support. Thanks for tuning into this video and I'll see you guys in the next one.